Welcome back to the COVID report. I'm Jeffrey Chen, and I know it's been over a month since I last uploaded, but in my defense, I've been... You also may be wondering what happened to my face. Did I contract smallpox? Am I repeating puberty? No, unfortunately, I got into contact with a bunch of poison oak. It was quite a rash decision.
Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list?
Jesus, Joe, why do you gotta be so mean? We'll begin this episode with the 2020 election, a shitstorm so massive Taco Bell is now suing it for copyright infringement. The 2020 election is like if the passengers of the Titanic got to choose whether or not to avoid the iceberg in front of them, with half of the boat saying that they don't want to wear a life jacket because that would be the government infringing upon their right to drown. But I'm here to tell you to vote. And I'm sure you've heard this message a million times before, from celebrities, to teachers, to Binky and Buster from PBS Kids' Arthur.
Elections are important because that's when you get to vote and choose the people who run the government. So it's important to vote.
Aw, isn't that wonderful? What other word of advice does this wholesome childhood show have for us?
Sorry, Sue Ellen. It's a brother and sister race. Maybe there's a contest for lonely children after this. It's only children, DW. A lonely child is what you're gonna be when I sell you.
Now you may think that Arthur's being a dick to DW, but we're just really scratching the surface. Arthur did end up selling DW and to Jeffrey Epstein. You're a monster, Arthur. A goddamn monster. Now you may be wondering, why should I vote this year? Well, if you're 18 years old and a citizen of the United States, I'd argue that it is your civic duty, and you're going to be exercising your democratic right to vote in what might be the most consequential election in our lifetime. And I know that is a statement that everyone has said already, but god damn it, I'm in a pandemic. I can't attend my college due to said pandemic. My friends are all in their respective colleges while I started working at a boba shop, only to realize that my 1 year spent working at Starbucks did not prepare me for the wave of preteen and adolescents that I had to deal with on a daily basis. And that even though I work at a boba shop, I don't have the balls to tell them that no, trying to survive off only vaping and drinking boba is not an effective dieting strategy. You'll just develop diabetes. So please, if you're a citizen over 18, vote. As of this video, the election is tomorrow, and although it may be too late to vote by mail or early, you can still show up in person to vote. And if you end up doing that, just make sure you stay safe from COVID. The only thing that should kill you on election day is staring directly at Joe Biden's teeth, which will turn you into a smoking pile of socialist ash. Excuse me, turn us into a smoking pile of socialist ash. I'll tell you that I've already voted. I voted by mail because I'm lucky that California has a mostly effective mail-in voting system. Those who know me probably do know who I voted for, but I can assure you their name does not rhyme with Kanye Best. But let's move on to coronavirus, which is sweeping across the nation faster than my family swept me out of the house after I told them that I wanted to become a comedian. America has just broken the record for the most COVID cases reported on a single day, with over 99,000 cases on the 30th of October, which prompted Jay-Z to write, "If you're having a pandemic, I feel bad for you, son. We've got 99,000 problems and a vaccine ain't one." 16 states, including Illinois, North Dakota, Ohio, and more, also reported single-day records for new cases. Altogether, almost 1,000 people died on that Friday. It's in these moments that I think of an ancient Chinese proverb that I feel accurately reflects the gravity of this situation. This is a fucking mess. At this point, it feels like we've lived in a pandemic for forever. I personally can't remember what life was like before the pandemic. Did you know we would only have to pay like $10 instead of $30 to watch a Mushu Les Mulan? And remember how it used to be that if you saw someone on the street you knew, you couldn't just cross over to the other side and claim you're doing that to benefit society? A question many of us are asking is, when will coronavirus end? And the answer, of course, is complicated. See, pandemics are like M. Night Shyamalan movies in that most of them don't have a definitive, satisfying ending. Some, like the bubonic plague and Avatar: The Last Airbender, do end, but only after crippling society. So to help us answer this complicated question, it might be useful to look into what a pandemic is. Its definition, stages, and historical context might give us a better picture of how COVID-19 will shape up. So let's start with the definition of a pandemic by looking at how scientists classify the spread of diseases. We have outbreaks, which is defined as a sudden rise in cases in a community or a specific area. We actually expect certain outbreaks every year, like the flu, or anytime Timothée Chalamet appears in a new movie. Then we have epidemics, which is an outbreak on a larger scale, followed by pandemics, which is an epidemic that infects multiple countries across the globe. A common misconception is that once a pandemic is over, it's completely gone. And the truth is, we've only truly eradicated one pandemic, that being smallpox. And it took over 30 years of global efforts to get rid of it. And we're currently still living with other diseases that have caused pandemics, and for some time. HIV is still classified as a pandemic, even though most of us hardly ever think of it. Most pandemics follow similar phases. They start with a disease from animals that spreads to humans, whether that be through a bat, a rat, or even a cat. Or as Dr. Seuss eloquently put it, by rat, by bat, by a whole bunch of fleas, you can't hide from an infectious disease. From there, the disease spreads to humans, where it either expands to the human population or fizzles out like that Batman vs. Superman movie. But eventually, following a peak in cases, the virus either disappears or, in most cases, becomes endemic, meaning it turns into a disease that persists in the community at a much lower and consistent level. Experts currently believe that COVID-19 will fall into this category. But how much damage an endemic COVID-19 will cause will vary based on many different factors. For instance, a really effective vaccine, like to the level of the MMR vaccine, would pretty much suppress the virus, while a less effective vaccine could cause COVID-19 to behave more like the seasonal flu. Other factors, like if COVID-19 mutates in a specific way, or the rate in which coronavirus can infect individuals who have previously recovered from coronavirus, would impact it as well. So when COVID-19 becomes endemic, would life return to what it was like before March? Last Wednesday, Dr. Fauci said in an interview with Melbourne University that he currently expects that the US won't start getting back to normal until the end of 2021 and perhaps early into 2022. Because remember, even if we get a vaccine in the next couple of months, as we discussed in a previous episode, that vaccine still has to be produced, distributed, and administered to people all across the country, starting with medical professionals, social workers, and those with pre-existing conditions. Someone like me is likely to be at the bottom of that list in terms of priority, unless I ransack my boba shop and get diabetes. For historical context, the 1918 Spanish flu isn't said to have ended until the summer of 1919, at which point those who had been affected passed away or developed some sort of immunity. Unfortunately, Dr. Fauci worries that COVID-19 may remain out of control for longer than it could have been, given how many Americans have been resistant to wearing masks and following essential public health guidelines. Who knew stupidity would lead to deaths? I didn't, but you can check out BlackFridayDeathCount.com to learn more. So really, the only thing we can do now is continue wearing face covering and social distance, and I know we've already reached that stage where we're getting really sick of living in a pandemic. Mental health illnesses and drug use is on the rise in America, largely due to increased isolation. But here we're in a situation where every choice has both a short-term and a long-term consequence, and finding the right balance is key. For instance, some states have started reopening businesses with increased health measures and social distancing. But we can't choose to pretend that the pandemic doesn't exist, or that we will just have to deal with it without changing our behavior. Take this very well-spoken individual who advocates a different strategy he calls herd mentality.
It would go away without the vaccine, George, but it's going to go away a lot faster with it.
It would go away without the vaccine?
Sure, over a period of time, and you'll develop herd, like a herd mentality. It's going to be herd developed, and that's going to happen.
Clearly, our epidemiologist in chief meant herd immunity, the concept that by having a large section of the population immune to disease, you protect the ones who aren't immune. You may remember I talked about herd immunity in an earlier episode about the coronavirus vaccine, where I also compared the sex lives of Star Trek fans to the chances that my parents would support me in having a career in stand-up comedy, which is to say, non-existent. But in that episode, we talked about herd immunity in the context of vaccinating a majority of the population against coronavirus, not in the context of actually infecting a majority of the population with coronavirus, which is a moronic idea. Trying to get rid of coronavirus by infecting as many people with coronavirus is like trying to fix a Kid Rock concert by featuring guest singer Pitbull. It's going to make things much worse, and people are going to die. But for now, we can only continue to do what works. Because the virus is currently in control and there's no real way to know for sure when we'll be back to paying a reasonable price for Disney's new live-action remake of Mulan. $0. Hashtag bring back Mushu, you Mushu-less morons. But as we continue to learn more about COVID and develop new technologies, we'll get closer and closer to what life was like before COVID-19. And maybe, just maybe, We can treat coronavirus like how a stereotypical Asian family would treat their child who wants to pursue comedy. Kick it out of the fucking house. But let's move on. It's important to remember that coronavirus is not the only epidemic spreading across America. A new form of crime dubbed cheesing is sweeping across unsuspecting neighborhoods. To learn more, we turn to our very own correspondent, Jeffrey Chen. Jeffrey?
Thanks, Jeffrey. There is no doubt that society is more dangerous now than ever before. Coronavirus, political polarization, and a Mushu less Mulan. But a new epidemic is spreading across America, and experts are calling it a crime comparable to murder. Last week, I was notified of a cheese-related crime that was reported on Nextdoor, basically an upper-middle-class suburban Facebook with somehow more misinformation and toxicity. In this post, the victim claims that they were a victim of a horrific crime. The post reads, "Be careful late at night. Just got home after checking on a sick relative. As I parked my car, a black sedan pulled up alongside me, lowered the window, and threw something at my driver window. They tore down the street so I couldn't even get their license plates. When I got out to see what it was cheese. 3 slices. Cheddar. Warn your friends and neighbors. Food throwing is going on in our neighborhood, and I pray this doesn't happen to you. Having something thrown at you is no laughing matter." And only a day later, the victim posts another grim message. They write, "I can't believe I'm writing this." They came back. After I cleaned off the cheese from my windshield, they came back overnight. Yes, they went and bought more cheese and cheesed not only my windshield again, but my passenger side window and my side window as well. It was dried onto the windows and I had to scrape and scrub for almost 20 minutes to get it off. And I left behind a smelly residue. I'm going to spread olive oil on my windows tonight. Guess I'm tagged now, and who knows if these thugs will come back with ricotta, blue cheese, or maybe even brie. I refuse to live in fear. These posts mark the start of a new wave of crimes in this once peaceful neighborhood. We have managed to obtain an exclusive interview with another victim of this exact same crime. For their protection, their voice and appearance has been altered.
Where were you on the day of the attack?
I was parking my car after visiting my beloved rooster who had just fallen ill. Then, I was attacked.
And who attacked you?
Thugs, domestic terrorists, teenagers, what does it matter?
What did they do to you?
The victim claims they suffer from emotional trauma and PTSD, a mental health issue that impacts exactly one person in the continental United States, as well as a lactose-intolerant dairy farmer in Bangladesh.
The worst part of the crime wasn't scrubbing the cheese off or having to kidnap the neighborhood raccoons to lick the cheese off the windshield. It was the comments by my neighbors on Nextdoor.
They were right. There is a history of victim shaming that comes with these cheesy attacks. The comments on the first victim's Nextdoor post were downright merciless and cruel. One says, "Sad. I used to be very fondue of this neighborhood." Another turns to religion, claiming, "Let's just praise Jesus that no one was hurt." One even blames the victim, saying, "I think the victim may have cheesed someone off."
So reading these comments, how do they make you feel?
These comments represent the worst of America. These new generations are too woke to prosecute heinous crimes. If it was up to me, these cheese terrorists would be on death row. We started the war on drugs, why not the war on cheese?
I asked the victim why this epidemic has been so underreported in the media.
The biased media. If the mainstream media wasn't being funded by big lactase, we would be hearing so much more about this.
Before I left, I asked the victim if I could take a photo of them with the evidence. Reluctantly, they agreed.
Thank you for this interview. And now for the photograph, say cheese.
You motherfucker!
I'm Jeffrey Chen, signing out.
Thank you, Jeffrey, for another Gouda report. And here at the COVID report, we promise that until the perpetrators are detained, we won't stop investigating until we can confidently say Queso closed. But thank you for tuning into yet another episode of the COVID report. I am now about to enter another month-and-a-half hibernation period. Remember, if you like this video, make sure to spread it around. Maybe it'll go viral. But for now, I'm Jeffrey Chen. Vote, stay safe, and may God save us all.